Hello, welcome to the New Stack Makers, a podcast where we talk about at-scale application development, deployment, and management. Microsoft is the sponsor of our podcasts and live streams from the Open Source Summit in Los Angeles, California. Learn more about app service on Linux and Microsoft's journey as they continue their road to adopting and embracing open source technologies. Hey, it's Alex Williams of the New Stack here at the Open Source Summit in Los Angeles, and I'm joined here today with Julie Lewson. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks for joining us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then have some questions for you about Microsoft and its journey to open source.
Great. So I joined Microsoft 25 years ago as a developer working on Microsoft Access, the very first version. I've been in development all along, and one of the main product I led is the rewrite of Visual Basic onto .NET platform. So I was the development manager at the time. We rewrote the IDE, the compiler, the debugger, you name it. We have redone it. We ended up building a V7 and a V1 at the same time. And I've been a developer in the Visual Studio space ever since then. Right now, I'm the corporate vice president for our developer tools and services in Microsoft.
You moved right up through the ranks then. That's fantastic.
Has spent many years there.
Yes. So last year was Microsoft's first year keynoting at LinuxCon North America, and you're now back again at Open Source Summit. I'm curious what's changed over the past year in Microsoft's open source strategy.
Well, in the last year, I think that you should just see us doing even more with open source versus a clear change in strategy. Really, our change in open source happened about 3 years ago. I think that's really the mark of when we made significant shift. Last year, we made GitHub top enterprise with number of contributors list with over 15,000 Microsoft employees contributing on GitHub. And in the last 12 months, I think our pace and our sort of contribution to the overall open source community has only picked up even more.
Mm-hmm. And this is an interesting thing to look at when you think about Satya's leadership, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. For being as long as I have been with the company, I really appreciate what Satya has brought as a new leader, to the company. I really think him as a new generation of leader, very focused on being open. We talk a lot about our growth mindset. Spend a lot of time talking about our customer obsession. How can we better serve our customer base? And a lot of that, and being very collaborative with our industry partners, etc. And all of that really fueled the fundamental cultural shift that you're seeing with Microsoft. And we made dramatic changes in the last 3-4 years.
So you joined the Linux Foundation in November of last year, and you also joined the Cloud Foundry Foundation in June and the Cloud Native Computing Foundation in July. Those are three why are those, I guess the question is, why are those three organizations so important?
Well, one of the key things we're trying to accomplish, obviously, in Microsoft is that we're trying to deliver intelligent cloud, intelligent, edge strategy to the overall customer base. And particularly for the cloud, Linux plays a significant role in the kind of workload that is enabled in the cloud. And we want to make sure that we are delivering the best customer experiences for customers, no matter what kind of operating system they're running, and really help them realize their own transformation and their own value to their customers. And so our pursuit of joining these foundations is really motivated by our desire to be customer obsessed, to go to what customers are wanting to use and give them the best service that we can provide.
Good afternoon, attendees. Breakout sessions have begun. Please make your way.
So open source users are coming to Azure, and I was noticing that 1 in 3 VMs on Azure are Linux now, and that Linux is actually outpacing Windows growth on Azure. That kind of does speak, doesn't it, to your need to be involved in these organizations and be involved in the community from multiple perspectives.
That's right, and I think that honestly, given the history of Microsoft, we face multiple challenges. One is that to even get customers to recognize that we have a fantastic cloud that can run Linux extremely well, and I think joining the foundation is both a commitment to the long-term future of Linux, as well as making sure sure that Linux continue to run extremely well in our cloud infrastructure. And then we have a lot of technical depth, and we can contribute to the growth of this ecosystem and the long-term technical future. Particularly if you're thinking about the world of containers, etc. There's a lot can be done with our technical process, with our capabilities in bringing an even better solution to the overall customer base.
So how does that then translate then to partnership relationships? I mean, you have partner relationship with Red Hat now, and Docker, and many more.
We have a huge number of partnerships, and I think that right now, if I think about it, we focus here a little bit on the orchestration engine, the Kubernetes, the operating system, the Linux. There's many variations of Linux that we all talk to. We have a deep partnership with many commercial partners to run, on top of Azure. We actually, coming from developer tools, we also spend an enormous amount of time with the Java community. We joined Eclipse Foundation as well, with the Node community, making sure like all of the programming languages, the DevOps solution can all work extremely well in our cloud. So our, open source engagement is actually much, much broader than just the operating system or the orchestrators.
It's represented too in your Azure App Service that that's just now running on Linux. And
that's right. Yeah. And then our, just very recently we have, announced the GA of our app services on Linux.
Yeah.
And that allows, any developer taking their Node, Python, whatever application they want, with, package it in a Linux container and deploy it easily, and then you benefit with the cloud scale that we deliver. And with Visual Studio Code, which is our very simple, easy to use development tool that's entirely open source and cross-platform, it's a great programming environment for Node developers, for Go developers, for Python developers.
Yeah.
And so it's a great developer tools and cloud story together.
You were talking about cultural change earlier. How have you seen the company change to really embrace open source?
Oh, that's a great question. And if one of the story I was planning to share in my keynote later on is what the world looked like before Satya became CEO, and what it was like for developers in Microsoft. And very surely back then, as a developer, you're simply not allowed to look at open source software at all without a approval from VP. Can you imagine? And that was just like 4 years ago, not that long ago.
Yeah.
And we have moved, if you think, reflecting on that statement versus where we are today with over 15,000 employees contributing to open source effort on GitHub. That is a line shift kind of cultural change. And I think that that from the cultural perspective, have really encouraged every single one of us to look for best practices of what the community has already done, to learn from the broad contributions the community has made, and not think about in a maybe historically more siloed mental framework, but really think about how we can build on all of the contributions and all of the effort and asset that has available out there in the open.
One of the things I'm really curious about are things like, how you are integrating feedback loops now that you're much more committed to open source, and how that's different to, those earlier years at Microsoft when you were working as a developer.
Yeah, and that's a great question as well. And in the old Microsoft, and a lot had to do with the pre-internet era, right? Microsoft, really the claim to fame product of Microsoft is Windows and Office. And think about 1995, what the world looks like back then. And I would say for a long time, the Microsoft internal system was optimized for the 1995 world, which is you buy your software in a physical box from a physical store. And if you had any questions, you can call Microsoft product support. If there were any significant issues, we ran into a thing called a recall, which literally means those physical boxes have to come back to Microsoft with the issue fixed, and a new boxes has to be remade, right? That was the world back in the 90s that we really so much of our infrastructure and product came to the world was back then. And you shake your head, exactly, and we shake our head. In the internet era, the world has completely changed. Now we have to change with the world, with internet service-based delivery, with a cloud mentality, with a continuous feedback cycle, with the DevOps practices. And those are the new practices that we're practicing, and we're also helping our customers to embrace and adopt as well.
That's yeah. I'm shaking my head because it's just so fascinating to think about the the inventory you needed to keep and the sophistication of managing that inventory alone, and and just the dimensions that brought, and how the complexities have shifted, though. Like Adrian Cockcroft talks about how if you fill up a balloon and you squeeze it in one place, because the balloon will pop open somewhere else, right? It'll inflate somewhere else. Now, where has the complexity moved, in your opinion, over these past 25 years? If in those days it was the complexity of retail and physical boxes, to today, what is that complexity that is there now?
I think that if you think about the dimension of the problems that computing is solving, it has really shifted significantly. Where 25 years ago, predominantly you have PCs, they're not connected, so they're really talking about, it's really about for individual productivity, right? And in enterprises, the computing, the reason we talk about IT department is really servicing the employees of the business. It's about the back end. Where today, when we talk to companies, one of the key questions we will talk about is that what would a Uber moment look like for your industry, where a company with no asset, a startup, entirely built on software, running in the cloud, can completely challenge a classic business. Airbnb is another good example where they have more hotel rooms, right, that they're managing than any of the biggest hotel chains. And when you're facing transformations like that, you have to think about what the cloud can bring you, because as a IT servicing employees of the business, you never have to worry about the number of employees going from 100,000 to 1 million overnight. When you're servicing the customer base, the consumers as a business, that happened to you all the time. And that requires different set of infrastructure investment. The customer and consumer have different expectations for these businesses. Think about your own banking experience. 10 years ago, my experience with my bank has to do with how often I go to the branches and things like that. Now it's entirely my mobile experience. How good is your mobile app delivery? IT has really moved to the forefront. That's why we say, every business is a software business. And because the software capability is equating that to your core business capability. And in that world, how do you really deliver the new customer experiences? And now we're talking about AI, artificial intelligence, and how is that going to change the automations and the workforce, the experiences. Those are the new dimensions of complexity. It's really our expectation as consumers are continually rising, and businesses had to rise with those expectations to deliver new customer experiences and value. Otherwise, the startups will come in and challenge the establishment.
That's fascinating. I want to shift the conversation a little bit to again to app service on Linux, and you just made it production ready, on Linux. Can you tell us a little bit more about what this brings to customers?
Well, one of the most common things as we spend time talking to our enterprise customers about using open source software and all of that is they are facing challenges about they love to use open source software. At the same time, they face challenges about how do they bring it to global scale with industry compliance that actually meets the requirement of the particular industry that they are in. And they want a very simple and easy way for their developers to build and develop and test and deploy the software, because their value is in banking or hotel management, and it's not their sort of core competency to go spend all of the time and energy to manage the orchestrators of the world. And so they're coming to us looking to say, how can you actually make using open source software in the cloud context super easy, where I'm not doing and differentiate heavy lifting. And that's where, things like app services provide so much value, because as a fully managed service, you just have to go deploy your containers. We help you manage the SSL certificate, the deployment slots challenges. And we have global scale that helps you take your application, service your customer base worldwide. If you need a particular certificate because you're in a particular industry that required variety of certificates or different kind of a standards code, we are actually doing that on your behalf. So you don't have to spend time and energy on these things. That is actually not what your customer sees and experiences.
And with that, then you need to bring an added benefit to the developer, don't you, about productivity?
Absolutely. And that is, I would say, is one of the core differentiators by Microsoft. We have such strong roots in developers and developer community. The first product Microsoft sold was a compiler. And we also had a very strong presence with our developer community. And I would say 5 years ago, when people think about what Microsoft has to bring to developers, was very much focused on what do we do with the Microsoft platform on Windows. Where today, we're really taking a strategy of we want to help any developers and any development team, no matter what kind of application they're building, and no matter what kind of operating system they're building it for. We want to be helpful to them.
And the other part of that then is the community, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And community, as I said, with Satya, we talk a lot about how we're becoming customer obsessed, really thinking about the customer feedback loop and all of that. And community, as we're engaging with community in our open source effort, we actually think a lot about how do we become community obsessed? How can we really incorporate community every step in our journey? How do we really get them to participate and engage? How do we actually get their feedback as quickly as possible? And the entire cycle that comes with that.
Now, it's evident that Microsoft is shifting to open source, and you guys have a lot of energy behind it, but there still are people who are skeptical, about Microsoft and how truly committed to open source it really is. What would you say to these skeptics out there?
Well, I think that I would like to win people over with what we do and not just what we say. If you look what we have done in the last 3 years, when we make a statement that Microsoft loves Linux, it's not just a statement. It's backed by enormous of engineering deliverables, cultural shift, and real product deliveries. Taking one of my products, Visual Studio Code. We have just crossed 2 million monthly active users, where 40% of that is running on Linux and Mac. That's so we have the best code editor on Linux. So Microsoft Love Linux is not just a statement, it's backed by action. When we talk about .NET Core, another open source project that my team leads, we're in a close partnership with Red Hat and the rest of communities. And .NET we have significant workload now running in Linux. We know that because our customers are telling us this. If you look at how many Linux VMs we have running in Azure, it's a critical part of our business success. So it only makes sense that we want our Linux VM numbers in Azure to go, actually it's higher than a third now. It's actually approaching 50-60%. Want that number to be as high as possible. It's directly reflected to our business success and tied with what we're wanting to deliver. So, I like to encourage the skeptic to work with us and check the engineering reality and check the product reality and hold us to building great product for them. And that's, I think, we'll have a far more productive conversation.
Exactly. Well, Julia, thank you so much for taking some time to come talk with us here at the New Stack. We appreciate your insights and helping explain to us about Microsoft and how it is evolving with its open source focus.
Thank you so much for having me, Alex. It was great to be here.
Thank you. Microsoft is a sponsor of our podcasts and live streams from the Open Source Summit in Los Angeles, California. Learn more about app service on Linux and Microsoft's journey as they continue their road to adopting and embracing open source technologies. Listen to more episodes of the New Stack Makers at thenewstack.io/podcasts. Please rate and review us on iTunes, like us on YouTube, and follow us on SoundCloud. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.